Hi everyone, today I'm going to be tier ranking the 60 books I read in 2023. I'm Liz, for those who are new here, and I really started getting into reading a lot towards the end of this year. I read a lot of really good books, but I also read a lot of really bad books, in my opinion. These are all my opinion, guys. Don't get offended if some of your favorite books are in my I should have DNF'd category. I was definitely heavily influenced by social media because I kind of discovered that section of the internet this year. And so I read some books that I've just learned are not my type of books. So it's been kind of a journey. But let me go into my categories I created. So I have the best of the best. So these are the books that are just, I'm always going to think about. These are really going to stick with me and they're just very good. And then I have the very good category. So these books I would consider really good, usually 4.5 or higher star rating. Then I have the next category, which is good for the most part. These books I felt like were pretty good. There might have been a few things that I didn't love about it, but it was overall a good book. I have the so-so category, didn't love, but maybe there might be some cases where you might want to read these. And then I have the should have DNF'd category, books that I probably should have just not, like I don't know why I finished them. And then I have the DNF'd and don't plan to continue category. All right, so I'm going to start with the books, the 3 books that I DNF'd, got partway through and decided they were not for me and I don't ever plan to continue reading them. And then I'm going to move into the reading order that I did this year. So like early in the year, I kind of did like what I typically do, which is 1 to 2 to 3 books a month. And then it really picked up towards the end. All right, so number 1 book that I DNF'd and do not plan to continue is A Little Life. I had so many people have warned me about like making sure you're in a good emotional place to read this book. So I looked up some spoilers for it and I'm really glad I did because a lot of things I read, I wish I'm not going to spoil it here because this is going to be a spoiler free review, but I decided that it would not personally work for me and given some known triggers I have. So I do not plan to continue reading that. The Power of Now, this one's been on my list for a while to read and I started reading it because I do kind of like some of that like spiritual kind of mindset type of books, but this one's just kind of really weird. I got like 15% of the way through and I was like, no. Kind of like, I don't know, it almost has kind of like a cultish kind of vibe to it. And he starts off talking about how he spent 2 years meditating in a park in New York City. Like that's all he did for 2 years. And I don't know, it just wasn't for me. And then another one I DNF'd and do not plan to continue is Icebreaker. This one I saw like all over the book talk, booktube, started it and just decided it was definitely not for me. From what I gathered so far from it, it seems like kind of snotty people who like to party in college and that's just not my vibe. So don't plan to continue that. Okay, so now let's dig into the books that I actually did complete this year. I'm going to move through these quickly because this video would be really long if I describe every single one of these books. So I'm just going to kind of move along and go with my initial gut instinct. First book I read this year and completed was Part of Your World. I kind of discovered this author towards the end of the previous year and I loved her books. I enjoyed this book. It doesn't stand out to me super well, so I'm going to put it in good for the most part. I remember thinking it was cute. It was one of those books that you just kind of finish in a very short period of time because it's very addicting. So yeah, I enjoyed that book. Next up, and this was definitely influenced by social media, I think, Hook, Line, and Sinker. And I did not love this book and probably should have DNF'd it. Like I said, no offense if you guys have liked these books. This just wasn't for me. I was kind of, had just discovered romance, so I was kind of on a romance kick. And I kind of didn't know what I wanted, and I heard that this took place in Washington State, which is my home state, and so that's really why I gravitated towards this. However, the male lead, they constantly describe as like a playboy who's very attractive, and that's just kind of one of my icks. I don't like when there's so much emphasis on appearance, and I personally would never like a playboy, so I just could not relate to this, and I thought it was kind of corny. The only thing I remember really liking about this is that her career aspirations were to do music composition for movies and TV, and I just thought that would be a really cool field. And the next book I completed this year was Beyond the Wand. So this is Tom's memoir of his time playing Malfoy on Harry Potter. I really, really liked this. I'm going to put this under very good. I was obsessed with Harry Potter growing up, and so it was really interesting seeing some of the behind the scenes of his experience on set and life since doing the Harry Potter films, and he throws in lots of really cute Harry Potter references, so I really liked that. Next up is It Ends With Us. I honestly can't remember this too much. I remember liking it for the most part, so I'm going to put it under good for the most part. I don't want to give too much away, but there is an interesting kind of point of view in this book. It was interesting to see around people who kind of stay with someone who's abusive, but it doesn't really stand out to me super well from the books I read this year. Every Summer After I'm going to put in this category as well. This is when I was really in my romance phase, because I just kind of discovered that I really had hardly ever read any romance before this year, and I was kind of really in that mode. And so I read this, Every Summer After. I did really like this book for the most part. I kind of discovered why that is now that I've been reading more this year. I think I like the trope childhood friends to lovers. I just think it's kind of cute, kind of seeing their relationship develop over time, and usually they do more like development on like just like getting to know each other, I feel like, with those types of books. So I enjoyed it. The ending, I don't want to give too much away, the ending definitely made it knock down some for me personally, but I do remember really liking it and kind of looking up other books like that after I read it that kind of could give me that same feeling. So I'm going to put it under good for the most part. The next book I read was The Summer of Broken Rules. This I'm also going to put under good for the most part. I remember thinking this was really cute. It's a summer romance. It takes place on Martha's Vineyard, and I liked the setting, I remember. The romance itself, I wasn't as, like, I guess connected to, like I usually would be under like the very good category, so I'm going to put that under good for the most part. Next book I read was Quiet, The Power of Introverts. This book I'm going to put under good for the most part as well. I really did like a lot of aspects of this book. I think actually it's an important book for a lot of people to read. There were just a few things that I didn't connect with super well. Sometimes I felt like there's a little bit too much generalizations about introverts. Like, I'm an introvert, but I often like will show up as extroverted, and I don't feel like that was they kind of almost stereotyped introverts a little bit. But overall, I actually do think this book was really good. I think it demonstrates how people who are like quiet and otherwise can really add value to the workplace. So I do highly recommend that book, even though there were a few issues I had with it. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Oh, I adored this book. It was so good. Oh, I don't know where to put it. I'm debating very good or the best of the best. I loved this book. I think the only reason I'm not going to do best of the best is that I remember kind of in the middle, it getting a little bit boring at times, but not like super boring, but just like, I remember not being like as like addicting, I guess. But the ending so made up for it. It was so good. Highly recommend that book. Why We Sleep. So this book I actually started years ago. I have some books like this where like I start them and then it takes me a very long time to finish them. And this one I had like started and then picked back up and started and picked back up. It's very educational about like this man who's dedicated his entire life to understanding the importance of sleep and how it affects so many of our health issues down the line. So I think this is very good. I gifted this to someone. I really enjoyed that book. Atomic Habits. I'm going to put this also under very good. I made a note in my reading journal like thing that I want to revisit this often, and I do anticipate myself wanting to revisit this. So another book is another self-help kind of book, and it was Do Nothing. I'm also going to put this under very good. I feel like it'd be hard for a self-help book to me to go under the best of the best. But this one was really good. This was my favorite of the self-help books I read this year, and that definitely has to do with my frame of mind. If you are a type of person who has a hard time ever relaxing, this book is for you. I thought it was really helpful and really helped me on my journey of kind of getting away from some unhealthy tendencies when it came to work and life. So highly recommend that. Next book I read was Stephen King's Fairy Tale, and this book was interesting because at the first I was like, this is gonna be a 5-star read. Like, it was so good, and I was like, wow, this is just so creative, and I just really loved it. And I still think it is really creative, but it definitely lost me there towards the end. It's unfortunate because the rest of it was so good. And so now, honestly, because of the ending, I'm like, should it go under so-so or should it go under good for the most part? I still think I'm going to do good for the most part. I think, like I said, the first part of the book was really good to me. It just kind of lost me there towards the end. So I'm going to do good for the most part. Next book I read was The Push. So this is Tommy Caldwell's book of his soloing of the Dawn Wall. I thought this was actually very good. So I listened to this on audio form, and Tommy Caldwell was not the narrator, and that's just something I personally like when it comes to memoir type books, is having the person who wrote it be the narrator, but it still was overall very good, and I really loved just the backstory that he gave, so I'm gonna put that under very good. So the next book, and guys, we have our first best of the best. This is Know My Name by Chanel Miller. I can't even tell you how impactful and powerful and just amazingly written this book was. It's her memoir, and I talked a little bit about it in my best books of 2023, but it was so well written because she just tells her story so beautifully. It's not written in like a blaming sort of a way, but it's written in a way where you feel like you kind of understand on a deep level how like our justice system does not work for people who've been sexually assaulted, and I just thought she did a beautiful job with that, and I'm always going to think about that book when I think of some of my favorite memoirs of all time. Like it was amazing. So next up we have a complete opposite end of the board. The Summer I Turned Pretty, I put under I should have DNF'd. I really liked the TV show on this, and I think that actually influenced my liking of this book. So I was biking across Europe when I read this, and I was listening to a lot of audiobooks because I just didn't have time to like read physical books at that time. And the character who plays the main character in the TV show is the one who narrates this book. And I thought I would like that, and that's actually why I decided to read it. But because there's just differences in the TV show and the book, it made me just really confused, and I didn't like it. So I should just have DNF'd it, and I'm just gonna watch the TV show version of that, I've decided. The Power of Vulnerability, this was really good. Very good. I've recommended this to people too in my life, and I think I want to revisit this one again, so I would consider that very good. I think I'm going to have a lot under the very good category, guys. We should all be feminist. I'm going to put this under very good. This is a very short book, very simple, really kind of overview about feminism and about some of the differences in different cultures of feminism, and I thought it was really good. Very simple, but very good. A Man Called Uwe. Oh, I thought this was cute. Oh, I don't know where to put this. Very good or the best of the best is what I'm debating. It's funny because when I first started reading this, I was so confused, and I remember telling my husband, like, this just seems like depressing, like what, because I had never watched the movies or anything like that before I read it. So I was just really confused, and I'm not going to give too much away because, I don't want to give any spoilers here, but then it ended up being really good, and I loved it. I cried. I think I'm going to go best of the best. I really loved that book. So there we go. Now on the complete opposite end of the spectrum once again. Honestly, I'm kind of embarrassed I even read this book. Looking at the title, looking at the picture alone should have given me an idea that I would not have liked this book. But I saw this on somebody's like reel, because this is when I first started getting into booktube or whatever. And someone had it on their like books I would sell my soul to read for the first time again. And so I was like, whoa. If that's the case, because I was brand new to this, I didn't know this was like a trend. And so I was like, well, if that's the case, then I need to read this. Like, so I picked it up. I mean, I knew it was going to be a romance, but I didn't at all know anything else about it. And let's just say I got to like 2/3 of the way through until I realized what this really is about. So for those that don't know, this has some like BDSM stuff in it. Had no idea. I'm listening to this on audio. I'm on some popular bike trails. Again, this is while I was biking across Europe. I spent 3 months biking across Europe. So if people keep wondering why I keep mentioning that, I spent a lot of time listening to audiobooks because of that. And this was just, I was reading at the same time with a very serious book that required a lot of brain power, and I didn't have any other books downloaded because I get all my books from the library. And so I powered through this, which I probably should have just DNF'd it, but it was terrible. Honestly, it was embarrassing when the BDSM stuff started, because I'm listening to it on audio. I'm on a popular trail somewhere in Western Europe. I can't remember, maybe Italy. And it was just like, I remember looking around and being like, hoping no one could hear in my headphones what was happening, because it was so uncomfortable. I don't like it when people say derogatory things towards females. I think that's like kind of a trigger for me. I should have DNF'd this. I'm going to put it there. But then I really enjoyed the next series. So I started the ACOTAR series, and I fell in love with fantasy genre really, I think, from this series. It got me really back into it, and I just loved being kind of immersed in another world again. So the first book, I remember liking it. I'm going to put under good for the most part. It wasn't my favorite of the series, but I remember really, really enjoying it. The Court of Mist and Fury, I loved that one. I think I'm going to do that best of the best. That one was a really good book. A Court of Wings and Ruin was also very good. But I think I'm gonna put under very good, I think. Mist and Fury is kind of where a lot of the story kind of kicks off, and I think and the romance in that was so good that I think I'm gonna do that. But the Court of Wings and Ruin was really close up for me as well. And then I took a break from the ACOTAR series for a little bit, and I finished reading American Dirt. And this one I have mixed feelings on. I thought it was interesting. So for those who don't know the premise of this book, it's a story, it's all fiction, but it's of a woman who kind of is escaping the cartel and trying to leave Mexico and immigrate to the US. And she does it in all different ways. And I thought it was interesting kind of understanding some of the journey that people have to make to get there, but I did feel like it felt a little bit like just too many things happened. And then I read the reviews afterwards, so I kind of felt that way. And then I read the reviews afterwards and people said the same thing. I don't know where to put this. I think I'm going to do so-so. There were some interesting parts of the book, but then like sorry, I just saw an ant in the distance. I just felt like it was excessively sad and they just kept piling more and more on. It just felt like, okay, this is too much, guys. So I'm gonna put under so-so. Better than the movies. I thought this was really cute. I really liked kind of the rom-com feel of this book. There's no spice whatsoever, so if you're like a little scared about spice in romance books, this one's very cute. Fake dating trope. I guess the only thing for me is that it felt like a little young, and I know that's because of my age. Because I'm a long way from 17, which is the main character's age in the book. I actually started 3 different times this book, and because at first I was like, oh, this just seems too corny. I can't do it. But if you embrace the corny, then I feel like it is very good. Or good for the most part. I don't know. I'm gonna do very good. It's a little bit corny and cheesy, but that's it's a rom-com in a book, guys. And it's a young adult rom-com, so just expect that. Next up was A Court of Frost and Starlight. I thought this book was so boring. I loved the first 3 ACOTAR series, so this was kind of painful for me. The first 3 ACOTAR series, there's lots of plot, lots of like, you're on your edge of the seat, and this one's just like a snippet of the characters' lives during the holiday time, essentially. So I thought it was kind of boring. I'm going to put under so-so. Next up was Book Lovers. I'm also going to put this under so-so. I didn't really connect with the characters in this book. I also felt like when it comes to romance, I really kind of like a slow burn, and this book kind of has the people get together and then they aren't together for a while and then they get back together. And to me, I want them to really get to know each other and really develop that relationship before anything happens. And so I know that I'm biased that way. It's also grumpy, like rather than Grumpy Sunshine, it's just like grumpy. So I think I just didn't love the characters as much. All right, next I finished the ACOTAR series, at least what's out so far. I read A Court of Silver Flames. This book, I have mixed feelings on. I'm going to go so-so. I think the reason I put it under so-so is that I didn't really like the main character who they follow in this particular series. She's not a very nice person, and there's just so much spice in it that it's like really uncomfortable, and I feel like if they would have just gotten rid of some of that for me, like it's just like so vulgar in a sense, and I'm not a prude. Like I don't mind some spice in romance books, but this was just like too much. And I personally don't really like reading about the mechanics of spice, and this is very heavy on that, and it was just, I ended up skipping some of the sections because I couldn't, it's too much. But then the character arc kind of storyline, like towards the end, I thought was good. So that's why I'm putting under so-so instead of should have DNF'd, because I do think that there was still some merit, and I do think it's important with the rest of the series to kind of understand what happens, at least towards the end of that book. Oh, and then the next book was The Things We Leave Unfinished. I thought this was so cute. So cute. I loved the dual timeline. I loved the relationship with the grandma represented in here. I did feel like the contemporary romance that it followed was a little cringy for me. So I think I'm going to put it under very good instead of best of the best. That was my top romance I read this year, but I think just if the contemporary romance was just a little cringe, so I'm going to put it there. But overall, I loved that storyline. I cried. It has a twist at the end I did not expect. And so, yeah, I really liked that book. All right, next up was another Abby Jimenez book, and it's yours truly. This was one of my favorite books of the year. It's such a cute rom-com, and I don't know where I want to put it. I know I'm biased with this, I should specify, because I really identify it with my relationship with my husband. I don't feel like I've really seen kind of that in a book before, and so I'm 100% biased. Like, I relate to both characters in it so well. I don't know, I kind of want to go best of the best with this. I think I gave it a 4.5 stars, but for being a rom-com, like, I don't know if it does get much better than this, to me, personally. I think I'm going to go with with very good. I might change my mind and put this under best of the best, but I'm going to go very good for now. Next up was Stranded, and this is a mystery thriller about a group of people that are stuck on an island, and they are there to film kind of a reality TV show, but then they get stuck there longer. I'm going to put Stranded under good for the most part. I really liked the kind of survival aspects of this book. I thought it was an interesting concept. It was definitely Lord of the Flies, so there's like some disturbing aspects of this book, but I feel like that in general for mystery thrillers that's going to be the case. And so because I did feel kind of disturbing at some points, and I did feel like there was a few survival things that weren't super realistic, I'm going to put under good for the most part. But overall, I really did enjoy that book. Loveless, going under very good. It's just cute. There's actually a rom-com aspect in that book. Next up was Do-Over. This is also by the same author, Lynn Painter, as Better Than the Movies. And I really thought this was cute. It's really actually a perfect book to read during Valentine's Day because it all takes place on Valentine's Day. I thought the romance in it was really cute, so I'm going to put it under good for the most part. I have some mixed feelings on this next book, The Elephant Whisperer. I liked it for the most part. It's really interesting, the story of this man who has a nature park in Africa and kind of his experience with some unruly elephants that he took on in his park and the relationship they developed. So it's very cute. There are just a few things that I didn't love, so I'm going to put under good for the most part. Next up was Night Circus. This one I don't know what I want to do with. I either want to do so-so or good for the most part. I think I'm going to go so-so. I thought I would really like this book. However, it just didn't have enough plot for me personally. I thought the imagery was really cool though, and that aspect I really liked. But again, I just felt like I like a little bit more high stakes with my fantasy, and this didn't have the high stakes aspect. Before We Were Strangers, honestly don't remember much about this book. So I'm going to go so-so. I do remember finishing it really quickly. But it doesn't stand out to me. I know they're like friends in college, then they eventually become strangers. Oh, I remember this now. And then I think the reason why they became strangers I didn't love, and that's why I gave it not as high of a review. But overall it was pretty good. Oh, maybe I should do good for the most part. You know, it just doesn't stand out enough for me, so I think I'm going to keep it here under so-so. Six of Crows. I thought this was cute. I'm going to put under good for the most part. The world I found a little bit confusing, but I think I wasn't in the right mind frame when I read this to read a fantasy, so I do think that impacted my view on it. I remember towards the end thinking it was better, and I kind of liked the adventure aspect. They kind of go on a heist in the book, and there's like a group of people, and I do remember really liking kind of the dynamic with the friends, but I think I would give it kind of more in the like 4.25 range. So I think I'm going to put under good for the most part. Okay, Alone with You in the Ether, I'm also going to put under good for the most part. I, at first, loved this book. I was like, oh my goodness, this is so weird. It's so like different than other romances I had read. But then it kind of lost me there a little bit towards the end. So that's why I'm going to put under good for the most part. It's one of the main characters has bipolar, and the author actually wrote a note that she wrote it when she was kind of in a manic state, a good part of this book. And I could totally see that when I read that book, because I was just like, I felt like I was literally in the mindset of someone who is mentally unwell. But it is kind of cute, and the romance I really did like. So I'm going to put under good for the most part. Next up was Small Things Like These. Oh, this was so cute. It's very short, but I'm going to put under very good. It takes place in this small Irish village, and it's just a very simple story, as the name suggests. Perfect to read around Christmas time because it takes place around Christmas time. But it really kind of demonstrates kind of an issue that was in place until fairly recently there. Just the kind of the message being that like anyone can make a difference in small ways. And yeah, I just thought that was really cute. Okay, A Flicker in the Dark. Honestly, I think these are out of order at this point. They are. I don't know what happened. These aren't the order I read them. But anyways, A Flicker in the Dark, I'm going to put under so-so. Oh, no, actually, I'm going to put it under... I don't know. I'm going to do actually good for the most part. I think this, I remember it being addicting. So in that way, it's good. It gets you kind of on the page turner aspect. However, I've mentioned before, I just don't really like disturbing and kind of creepy thrillers. I just don't think they're for me. But I do think this book overall was good. Cultish. This I thought was overall pretty interesting. I'm going to put under good for the most part. There were just a few things that I didn't feel like was super accurate, and I kind of would have wished they'd given more of a background on kind of people's stories in cults. But overall, I did think this was interesting. It talks about how like there's different cultish language that is really throughout our whole entire culture, and so I thought that part was really, really interesting. So I'm going to put under good for the most part. Next up was The Go-Giver. This is just a short little book about kind of a giving philosophy when it comes to growing business. So this is definitely not for everyone. If you're trying to grow your own business, this would be kind of a book to read. But I'm going to put under good for the most part. Next up, oh, this one was so good, guys. This one's going in the top tier. How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. I feel like this book was so eye-opening about kind of how we are in the state of the world that we are, where some people, some countries and continents, I guess, have higher development index compared to others, and really demonstrates how Europe and eventually the US really caused the underdevelopment of Africa and other nations that aren't as developed per development index. This was so chocked full of tons of really dense information. So definitely it took me multiple months to get through because I had to take it in pieces. But overall, the messages from this book are going to stay with me. So I'm going to put it in best of the best. All right, and then I read Vow of Thieves. This book I thought was not as good as I honestly anticipated. I think I gave it a 4-star. I'm going to put under good for the most part. It was still very interesting. The first part of the book I actually really liked, but then it kind of lost my interest towards the end a little bit. So I'm going to put under good for the most part. All right, next book I read was How I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jenna McCurdy. This I'm going into top tier. I loved hearing her story. I think she did a really great job kind of adding so much humor to the mix. She actually did this in like first person present tense, which was different than most books I've seen, and I thought that actually kind of made you more invested in her story and could understand her mind frame, like her frame of mind better, and just kind of the mixed emotions with the parent who doesn't treat you well. So I thought that was really well done. Okay, I read None of This Is True. This I have mixed feelings on again. I think I'm going to go good for the most part though. I feel like this had the thing where you are just wanting to finish this. Like, it's so page turner. You want to know what's going to happen. But I felt like it has a little bit of that, like, kind of, you feel kind of disturbed reading it. And the ending I felt like could have been done in a way that was more like wrapped up. I prefer things a little bit more wrapped up than this was. So I'm going to put under good for the most part. And then The 7-Year Slip. I thought this was super cute. I'm going to put under very good. I actually initially almost DNF'd this book because it just kind of seemed like a typical romance book and I really wasn't in the mood for that. But then the ending definitely made up for it to me and I thought it was very cute, very good. The Shatter Me series. So I have multiple books from here that I read this year. I'm just going to rate those, I think, at the same time. I have mixed feelings on. So I just now, since in 2024, finished Ignite Me. And that redeemed the series a bit for me. But a lot of these books early on I was just like, oh, like it wasn't very good. I kind of anticipated higher, but because Ignite Me I thought was really good. So I'm going to put these under so-so because you do have to read these in order to get to Ignite Me. But just, there's some cringe for sure. Then A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I loved this book. I'm going to put this under very good. My top mystery thriller of the year. I thought it was really cute. It's a true crime podcast in a book. And yeah, it was really good. And then A Thousand Splendid Suns. Oh my goodness. This was so good, guys. It just doesn't get better than this, guys. A Thousand Splendid Suns. I literally full-on bawled hysterically reading this, and that just shows how powerful of a book it was. Like, I felt like I was literally living the lives of these characters. He did such a good job of showing what it's like to be a woman in Afghanistan, and I loved that. I loved it. Love Light Farms. Oh, this was cute. I gave this a 4 stars. I finished this recently because I read it during the holidays. So I'm going to put it under good for the most part. It's a small town Christmas romance, and I liked that aspect. I kind of like the small town. It takes place on a Christmas tree farm. I really liked the relationship depicted in it. It's like a friends to lovers story. Overall, I thought it was a cute book. Just know that if you're sensitive to spice in books, it's fairly heavy on that. Next book was Miles from Nowhere. This is a memoir of a sort about someone's experience with her husband bikepacking across the world for 2 years. I thought this was really well done. I think she did a great job summarizing such a long trip like that. And I just related so much to so many aspects of this having done I just related to so many aspects of this having done a bike trip with my husband across Europe. Gosh, apparently I need water because I've been talking so much. Not used to this. Okay, next up is top tier book. The Body Keeps the Score. I loved this book. I actually am still reading parts of it. I read most of it in 2023, so I'm counting it under here, but the author has spent his whole life researching and working in this space about healing trauma in your bodies. He really opened my eye to how trauma can cause other health issues in the body, and so I will forever recommend that book. It is by far the best of the best. I'm going to write A Witch in Time, and this has some Invisible Life of Addie LaRue aspects to it. I really enjoyed this. At the time I actually looked it up right before this. I gave it a 4.65, so I really liked it. However, I don't remember it as well as I remember Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. So I think to me that means it goes down a little bit, but I do remember really liking it. I think I'm going to go with good for the most part though, just because I don't remember it as well. But I did really like it when I read it. Okay, and then The Comfort Crisis. I thought this was very good. I really felt like inspired after reading this book to get outside my comfort zone even more and just push myself, and it really demonstrates all the health benefits of doing this for you, in both physically and mentally. And so I really liked that book. Oh, and then The Book Thief. This was really good. I'm going to put this under very good as well. This has some quotes from it that I'm always going to remember. I loved one of the opening lines in this book. Actually, let me see if I can just pull it out. Just some of the quotes from this book are just like nothing else. Okay, so one of the first quotes in the book is, "Here is a small fact. You are going to die." That is just, I can't even. It was just perfect. Narrator in this book. The only reason I didn't put this under best of the best is that I did get a little bit bored during it. It didn't keep my attention the whole time. But overall, it was a really good story, and I thought it was really creative how it was written with Death as the narrator. Super good. It's definitely a book that's going to stick with me for a while. Oh, it makes me wonder if I should put it under best of the best. But I think I'm going to stick with very good because I did get a little bit bored during it. And then next up was... Oh, you know what? I mixed this up. Vow of Thieves and Dance of Thieves I put in the wrong place. So Vow of Thieves I thought was very good. That is the second book in the duology, Dance of Thieves. And that one I thought really I liked the high stakes aspect of it. It kept me, it was a page turner. I really enjoyed it. Dance of Thieves is what I meant to put under good for the most part. I just got a little bit bored during that one. So that one, overall though, I still enjoy. It was a 4-star series for me. Oh, and Love in Other Words. is next up. This is so cute, guys. I finished this in like 24 hours. It's one of those books you just binge. It's so cute. Childhood Friends to Lovers. And I really liked their relationship. They're both like bookish people and they grow up together. And so because of that, of course, there's so much development with the characters and like they, you know, you have plenty of time to have them develop that chemistry and that love. And so I really thought it was cute. So I'm going to put it under there. And then last up, guys, is Fourth Wing. And this is best of the best to me. This had a few things that I didn't love about it. However, the rest of it so more than made up for it that it's going under best of the best for me. I know this one has gotten some criticism online, which honestly, I feel like I was so absorbed in the story. It was like nothing else this year. I was just so addicted to it and I wanted to just live in that world. It was one of those books I just kind of wanted to slowly savor because I didn't want it to really end. And that's how I know it was a really good book. So yeah, I'm putting that under best of the best. There are, like I said, there are a few aspects I didn't love. I felt like they kind of took one aspect of one of the books I have loved growing up into it. And I felt like that was a little bit, they shouldn't have done that. But the rest of it I just thought was so good. So yeah, this is my list, guys. Very heavy, as you can see, on the very good and good for the most part sections. Overall, it was a really good reading year. I'm really excited to see what this will look like next year. And if you guys have any book recommendations for me, if you have similar styles, let me know. I'd love to know. Also, if you just felt differently about some of the ratings I did for this book, I'd love to hear. I know that, like, this is strictly my opinions. I know some people love these other books, but this for me was what kind of stood out for the year. This is my brand new YouTube channel, so if you give this video a like, it really helps support me, and subscribe. I'll see you on my next video.